Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says he believes the city is turning the corner after the killing of George Floyd and a summer of unrest.
He also made it clear there is plenty of difficult work ahead. Fox 9 investigator Tom Lydon sat down to talk to the mayor about public safety, the city council, and the police chief.
We are on a record pace for homicide. We have young teenagers involved in carjackings. And you drive around this city, and some places like Lake Street, like downtown, look a shadow of what they once were. What's the path forward for the city right now?
It's a daunting task, undoubtedly, and it's on me, and it's also beyond me. I mean, right now we are confronting a series of crises that have been sandwiched on top of one another, and those crises in many ways are most acutely felt in Minneapolis. From an economic downturn to a global pandemic to the killing of George Floyd and the subsequent unrest. And all of these dynamics and the confluence of events that we're now handling, yes, we have a job to do. And that's everything from making sure that our city remains safe, that core city services continue to function with excellence, to making sure that we recover. And we are. And I'm a believer that 5 and 10 and 20 years down the road, we can look back at this time frame and recognize that this was the moment where we finally did things differently in a way that truly transformed how we operate at the city. And hopefully we can be an example for others to follow as well.
There seems to be a shift on the Minneapolis City Council in terms of what they actually imagine. Obviously, the charter amendment failed. There seems to be a shift in whether they've gone from abolishing to defunding to dismantling or something in between there. It's hard to get a read on. I want to ask you, and you said you've been remarkably consistent, where are you in terms of defunding, dismantling police? Where do you stand?
I believe we need deep structural change in the way our Minneapolis Police Department functions. Rather than subscribe to any one word, defund, dismantle, people sometimes say those words and they mean 1,000 different things. So I just like to be specific. If by defund you mean aspects of safety beyond policing, I'm on board. And we've got a violence interrupters model, which I think is going to bear fruit, is going to work, and hopefully a model that others can follow. If you're talking about mental health co-responders, I'm on board. If you're talking about decriminalizing addiction, absolutely. But if by dismantle or defund you mean simply get rid of all the police, no. I don't think that's smart. We need law enforcement in our city. There are instances, sadly but truly, when some form of crisis takes place and people need to call 911 and they need response from an officer. And that has been my position all along.
Do you think there is something cultural about the Minneapolis Police Department that is racist?
Culture is about people. It's about personnel. It's about having the ability to get the right people in and the wrong people out. And right now, when the chief or I fire somebody on the Minneapolis Police Department, 50% of the time they are sent right back by a mandatory arbitration provision through the state. So we'll terminate somebody, and then a year, sometimes 2 years later, that individual that has violated so much community trust gets sent right back to the police department. And our chief has been very clear. He said there is nothing more debilitating than making a decision to fire an officer and then having that officer come right back. To say that we need to change that law quickly is an understatement. It needs to change.
It seems like policing goes through fads. We went through a fad of community policing, which seemed to have been turned into saturation policing. We used to talk about broken window theory. Do you have any vision for what you want to see this police department look and sound like?
I'm not going to give you a slogan or a hashtag because there is no new quick fix. And you're right, so many of these philosophies are cyclical and they change over time. I think it's incumbent on all of us to rely on data to the extent we can analyze a causal connection. We are. And again, we have a trusted leader who I believe in Chief Arredondo. And there are times when he's getting hit from all sides. There are times when I'm getting hit from all sides. But the leadership that he's shown, especially through times of crisis right now, I think shows who he is as a person. And you mentioned several different philosophies of policing, and Chief Arredondo has been through most of them. I mean, he was a beat cop on the North Side back around 1990. And he's been able to construct a vision for where he wants the police department to go well into the future. And so I'm a believer in our chief. And no, there's not one simple, easy fix to any of this. And that's why it's necessary that we collectively don't pretend that there is one.
Thanks for all your time today.